Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back on another episode of the Daily Recap. And it's been a while since I did a Daily Recap episode. I'm starting to get back into it. Last week was insane. That's not a good excuse, but like the market close was ending at like 8 p.m. every single day. So it was kind of hard to do these episodes, but we were back to normal. I'm trying to just adjust my recording schedule so that it's easier to do it, even if the market close ends up going longer. So Monday through Thursday, every day, Daily Recap, we will be doing it. And what I'm really excited about talking about today, which is in the thumbnail or in the title, Palantir. It's been a while since we got a big Palantir deal. That's going to be our first topic of the day, Palantir and NATO. It's been a long time coming. If you've been part of the Palantir community, you knew this day was going to come. You didn't know when, and it's here today in 2025. So we'll be talking about that. Nvidia, $500 billion investment into the United States. Big deal. Stock didn't really react to that. We're going to talk about Nvidia. And then Trump, the Cent, this administration that has had a lot of updates in the context of tariffs, what the tariffs mean for volatility, what it means for equity prices. There's a lot to dissect, a lot to discuss. We also got some updates around Apple, Google, etc. So let's get into it. Daily Recap back every single day. All right, let's get started with our biggest news of the day, Palantir and NATO. Again, this was a long time coming, but it finally happened today. NATO and Palantir have finalized the acquisition of the Maven Smart System NATO for Allied Command's Operations Program, which is enhancing NATO's warfighting capabilities as announced by NATO today. Now, essentially, it's an AI-enabled system that's going to be providing advanced intelligence fusion, targeting, and decision-making tools, empowering commanders with secure AI applications like large language models, machine learning, etc. Pretty much the same type of lingo and language we've heard for many of the different government contracts that Palantir has been able to achieve. Obviously very similar for enterprises being more data-driven, having more applications, workflows, being more AI-enabled to automate those decisions. Basically, NATO is saying we are acquiring an AI Maven Smart System program from Palantir, and we're using it to integrate on the battlefield. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, I think there's a couple of pieces of analysis here. Number one, we don't know how much the contract is worth, but quite frankly, even if it's not worth a lot of money, it matters a lot more, but I do think it's worth a lot of money as well because it seems like this is a long program and it's an entire operating system that NATO is going to be establishing. The real reason it matters outside of the money, quite frankly, is that NATO is comprised of many countries, particularly many countries in Europe. And what has been the number one thing as a Palantir shareholder that's been the, I guess you could call it, red flag of the company, even though it's not really a red flag, but it's one of those things that you can always point to this as a critique. International growth sucks. Commercial and government-wise. So U.S. commercial has been the story. U.S. government has been the story. And the company has consistently said, hey, our U.S. commercial business is everything. Keep looking at that. That's where we get our margins, yada, yada. But that story is getting old. And eventually, Wall Street's going to want a new story. Wall Street's already given Palantir a hell of a multiple. Today was up about 5% based on that story. And they've executed against that story. I think they'll continue to execute against that story. But what's next? It's got to be an S-curve of growth internationally. So France and Germany, two big components of NATO, CARP has publicly said these guys don't want to buy from Palantir, don't want to use their software because they'll quote unquote do it themselves. We all know that's BS. They're not going to do it themselves. They're likely going to fail. It's not to say France and Germany can't make good software. It's just to say the type of transformative software you need comes from a company that's been doing this for the past 20 years. And to say, you're going to replicate that, especially in the bureaucracy that is the government, and be able to somehow get that to be transformative and useful and meaningful, it's just hard to believe. And if you ask anyone at Palantir, I'm pretty sure they think it's never going to happen. So my interpretation from this NATO contract, regardless of how much of it's worth or what it does to the stock, even though it makes sense that the stock pumped today just on this contract because it was a very, very big deal. Again, we've been waiting for this in the Palantir community for a long time. There's been a lot of hints that Palantir and NATO are working together. Today, we officially got the announcement. By the way, earnings May 5th as well. So that was announced today, Cinco de Mayo. The real reason I think this is a big deal is because if Germany and France are part of NATO and they're using Palantir, I think Germany and France might be like, wait a second, if we already use it in NATO and we're getting results, why don't we use it for our own governments? And I think this whole idea of Palantir being some evil company, yada, yada, like I think all that's going to fade away when you realize the software actually works. It works. It's transformative. You can't develop it yourself. And if they get real use cases and results from the partnership with NATO, I mean, in my opinion, the world opens up in terms of opportunities for Palantir when it comes to international growth. And that means there's an S-curve of international growth that I'm particularly expecting NATO to open up, particularly this contract, because if we want to start compounding at 40, 50%, we need to get Europe on our side. And right now, Europe's not on our side for whatever reason it may be. But eventually, they're probably going to get there. This is an AI revolution. This revolution is not slowing down, and you're either going to be left for dead in the revolution, or you're going to be a leader of the revolution. NATO today decided we want to be a leader. We do not want to be left for dead. And I think Germany, France, a lot of the other countries that have not wanted to work with Palantir for whatever reason, if they get results from NATO, they're going to start working with Palantir. So big congrats to all Palantir shareholders. This is a big contract. We've been waiting for this for a long time. I think Karp's probably going to talk about this on the earnings call. They're probably going to mention, hey, like, Europe, it's time. We're working. We're getting shit done. This is a revolution. You need to act fast. And the more results they give to NATO, the more chance they have for international government growth to continue to grow. So very excited for this. It's been a long time since we get a headline. Palantir doesn't really do a press release every other day. They don't really have to prove themselves anymore. But when we get press releases, we get something like we got today, NATO and Palantir officially happening. Okay, next update, Nvidia. Nvidia plans to produce up to $500 billion in AI infrastructure in the United States within 4 years, partnering with TSMC and Foxconn, along with another couple of companies in the United States that they're going to be working with for the logistics on the supply chain and the data centers that they're planning to build out. This is really exciting. These partnerships aim to build gigawatt AI factories for AI processing, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. This is what Nvidia put out today, and enhancing economic security. Jensen, NVIDIA CEO, here's what he said, quote, "The engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States, and for the first time, the initiative will strengthen supply chains and meet growing AI chip demand." I mean, look, to me, this is pretty damn incredible. And the reason this is pretty damn incredible is because essentially, Jensen's saying what Trump has wanted him to say for a long time, which is that the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States. Next 4 words, for the first time. I think this was music to Trump's ears. I think this is everything that he wanted to hear NVIDIA engaging in. Trump did comment on what NVIDIA said today. He said, "I want to thank Jensen. NVIDIA is an amazing American company, and they wouldn't have done this without the tariffs." So Trump sneaking in right there that, hey, I love NVIDIA, amazing company, a lot of praise for them, but they wouldn't have done this without the tariffs. NVIDIA stock didn't really react to this. I think the market is more concerned about the cyclical nature of NVIDIA, which is funny because NVIDIA just said they're going to spend $500 billion over the next 4 years. It looks like, you could say it's cyclical, but they're ready to make an investment on $500 billion, probably because they think they're going to make more than $500 billion. So, the cyclicality narrative is there. Maybe the market just doesn't believe AI is going to have that much CapEx demand. Whatever the market believes is what is causing NVIDIA to be trading at this current multiple. This news wasn't enough to get the market excited, even though I thought the overhang of the narrative that Trump is going to have all these semiconductor tariffs might go away, because it looks like now that NVIDIA is putting $500 billion into the United States, Trump doesn't give them semiconductor tariffs, or if he does put on tariffs on semiconductors, maybe excludes NVIDIA, which is kind of what he said about Apple. We'll talk more about it in a bit. But it seems like that this announcement just came and went. No one cared about it. So I think the implications of this announcement are not going to happen anytime soon. I think it's going to take time. I think we need a few good earnings for NVIDIA to continue showing that, no, we're legit. We're not just going to die out from some AI hype cycle. And I do think there is a better shot than not that Trump finally doesn't care as deeply about NVIDIA in the context of tariffs, because he recognizes, hey, NVIDIA is an American company. We need to be at the forefront of AI. I think Trump is smart enough to realize, like, if I tariff the crap out of NVIDIA, guess what country benefits the most? China. And so I think this is a great announcement. It's going to create a lot of jobs. It's a big win for Trump, big win for the United States, big win for NVIDIA. But I also think it is going to lead to Trump reconsidering, or at least seriously thinking of, the tariff exposure for the semiconductor companies, because he got what he wanted, a $500 billion investment. Like, you really don't need to get tariff revenue when NVIDIA is investing $500 billion in the United States. I bought some more NVIDIA today. So in my opinion, this is super bullish. It's only going to get more and more bullish. Quick last thing on NVIDIA. Sam Altman basically said they now have 1 billion users on ChatGPT, or they're very close to it. He said the growth in his latest TED Talk is something like he has never experienced before. And Sam Altman has grown companies in the past pretty aggressively. He's been in the Silicon Valley startup space for a long time. So the fact that he's saying, hey, this growth is insanity, just means to me more users, more queries, especially on the reasoning models, more compute, probably means more NVIDIA. All right, next update, tariffs. What has been going on with tariffs? I have never studied tariffs as much as I've studied tariffs over the past month, but and I'm by no means an expert, but I've learned a lot about tariffs. Okay, so I'm just going to do what has happened basically over the past couple of days, quite frankly. This is changing every single day, so I'll have more updates. But Saturday was really exciting in the stock market, even though it was a Saturday, because everyone thought iPhones, laptops, GPUs, etc. would be tariffed. Saturday, the White House came out and said, hey, these are not going to be part of reciprocal tariffs. So we're going to walk these back from the tariffs. That was great. Everyone was like, amazing. NASDAQ's going to open up 5%. Apple's good, yada, yada. Then Sunday, Trump came out and said, hey, that's fake news. We're not rescinding any of the tariffs. Those items will still be tariffed. They just won't have reciprocal tariffs. So those crazy percentages that we saw on Trump's board, that's not going to apply to like the Apples of the world, but they still will get a tariff. That's why we were up today, in my opinion. The NASDAQ was up about 1%, S&P about 1%. And I think it would have been up a lot more if the tariffs were completely exempted from Apple, but that's not the case. They're going to be in a different bucket of tariffs, which is what Trump clarified on Friday or Sunday, versus like there's no exemptions at all, which is funny because the White House put out a statement saying exemptions of tariffs. That was like in the title. So like it was just a communication thing. Now, what does this mean for the bond market and for the stock market? Bond yields last week were very aggressive. We saw the 10-year get close to 4.5 or above 4.5. We saw the 10-year get close to basically 5%, 4.957. That's not a good thing. When people sell stocks, which is what we've seen throughout the first 4 months of the year, right? Stocks have come down. People should be buying bonds. People should be saying, hey, I want to guarantee 4.5% for the next 10 years, risk-free, because it's the US government. Like the US won't default on their debt. That's how the US finances the operations that we finance in the United States. We issue our debt, people buy our debt, we take that money, we give them interest, and then we're able to go spend on whatever we want. When people sell bonds, yields go up. That's bad. People should not be selling bonds and stocks at the same time. People should be selling stocks and saying, hey, I'm going to go into bonds because that's something that's safe. Nvidia, Palantir is risky. I'm going to go into something that's safe. What we saw last week was people selling stocks and bonds and crypto. Where were they going? Gold, which is really bad, right? It's just scary. If people are going to gold, that means they think everything's failing, or they think there's a credit crisis. They think something's happening. So what the announcements that were made over the weekend, along with what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said today, which was that they have a lot of deals on the table and that the negotiations are going very well, is something that calmed down the bond market. It calmed down the equity markets as well. We need yields to go down because you can't have yields that are surging. A, because we have to refinance a lot of our debt. We don't want to refinance it at 5 or 6%, something crazy like that. B, the credit market is more important than the stock market. And bond yields, if they go higher, remember, yields are the cost of capital. So if we have bond yields surging higher, mortgage rates go higher, auto loans go higher, like everything, the cost of capital to do business goes higher. Now, J-Pow can cut rates and get that cost of capital to go down, but J-Pow is not cutting rates. Why? Because he feels the tariffs are inflationary. I think we will get our first 25 basis cut in June, but it's very difficult to get rate cuts if you think that tariffs are going to be inflationary, because then you're cutting into an environment that is going to be more inflationary. So from that perspective, the administration's in a tough space because they need J-Pow to cut rates, but then they have this massive tariff policy with 145% tariffs on China that obviously is going to be more inflationary. J-Pow feels it's going to be more inflationary, so he's not cutting. So we need certainties. We need volatility to chillax. The VIX, by the way, was down about 20% on the day. What did Bessent say and what did Trump say to get today yields to come down, aka people buying bonds, and stocks to not necessarily surge, but not also get sold off aggressively? He said, we have deals on the table. They said Apple and all these companies will have to have a bucket of tariffs that are not reciprocal rates, but minimum it would be at least 10 to 20%, which is not amazing for the iPhone. But the reason Apple was up 2%, at one point it was up 7% during the day, is because 20% is a hell of a lot better than 145%. So from a market expectation, that was just better for the market to deal with. So they said, hey, we're going to have tariffs, but they're not going to be reciprocal, so not crazy rates. We have a lot of trade deals on the table, which is really good for negotiations. And then finally, Scott Bessent said today, and I quote, let me give you guys the exact quote, because as soon as I saw this quote, I couldn't believe that he said this, but he did. He said, if we measure uncertainty by the VIX, I don't want to make market calls, but it seems like the VIX has spiked and likely peaked. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that today. That's bullish. That's bullish. The reason that is bullish is because if the VIX has peaked, the reason like a lot of stocks fell over the past couple of weeks is because VIX was over 50. If you buy stocks when VIX is over 50, this is a well-known stat, the 1 to 3 to 5 year return is always positive after you make that purchase. So I think Bessent's not doing anything, crazy. He's just looking at statistics and saying historically, hey, I think VIX has peaked, but he's also saying, hey, give us some times. We got some deals coming along the pipeline. It's not that scary. Trump's negotiating. We're negotiating. We're meeting with Vietnam, yada, yada, and we're going to get those deals done. And so as a result, you either believe Bessent, believe the administration, believe that we're still in a bull market. We just got to get inflation to come down, which it came down aggressively last week. CPI, PPI were at their lowest levels in over a couple of years. CPI since 2020 PPI since 2022. And you believe earnings growth is still going to be elevated, even if it's not going to be that 11% expectation people had going into the quarter or going into the year. And then you've got Bessent saying we've got deals on the table. I think the playbook for this administration now is get deals done every other day, announce them. That's more certainty. Get that 10% baseline tariff to like 5% by getting really good deals. Convince Vietnam, hey, we're only going to do a 5% tariff or a 0% tariff, which the market would love because that means inflation expectations come down. But give us a lot more concessions. And maybe Vietnam, given how good negotiating Bessent is, might end up conceding. And once you lower the tariff rate, you get a lot more deals and you get a really good deal with China. Yeah, I think we're in a good position. And if earnings growth is strong, which all the banks have had phenomenal earnings, we'll talk about that in a second. I think there's a shot to have a bull market in 2025. I don't think we have to get to 6,700 on the S&P, but the idea that we don't get back to 6,000, if those things happen, it's a big if, but if it does play out like that, I think we could have a good year. So tariff update is that the tariffs are still there. They've been paused. They've been reduced. We're probably going to get more buckets of tariffs, but overall, it seems like Bessent feels like he has control. And if the administration doesn't have control or does something crazy, the bond market will easily tell them that you can't keep doing this. And as yields go higher, we'll probably get some capitulation by the administration and hopefully some deals to get the bond market to realize things are okay. We're not going to have a credit crisis. All right, two more updates. The majority of the day was the tariff stuff, Nvidia and Palantir, but final two updates I want to give on today in terms of what happened in the markets. MicroStrategy bought another 3,459 Bitcoin. They have 531,644 Bitcoin now. It's a lot of Bitcoin. Average price, 67,556. They bought about $258 million worth of Bitcoin or $285 million worth of Bitcoin at an average price of 82,618. Now, Bitcoin has been holding up relatively nicely. I mean, to be honest, I didn't expect Bitcoin to be doing as well as it's doing, but it hasn't cracked below 77, which most people thought Bitcoin would have tanked by now with the NASDAQ falling 15%. No, Bitcoin's doing okay. The ETF inflows have not been good. Past 10 days, there's been triple digit losses out of the ETFs, 300 million, 400 million, 100 million, 149 million. But I don't think the ETFs matter that much anymore. Like someone's buying Bitcoin, even if it's not the ETFs, and the ETFs still have like 40 billion of Bitcoin under custody. It feels like to an extent, I'm not saying Bitcoin's acting like gold, but there is a world in which people are maybe choosing Bitcoin because they think there's going to be more quantitative easing, monetary policy that involves money printing, et cetera. And that is their hedge against all the craziness that's going on. In the midst of the volatility, Bitcoin's down for the year, but it's not down like crazy, like those, 30, 40,000 candles in a couple of days. Like, yeah, it's slowly gone down with the NASDAQ and the S&P throughout the entire year, but it's just not been that aggressively hit. So Bitcoin, MicroStrategy continuing to lever up. And as long as Bitcoin stays afloat, then that will be good for MicroStrategy. Final update of the day had to do with China. I know we talked a little bit about it just now in the tariff stuff, but China last week imposed a 125% tariff. They also said, hey, we're not going to listen to the United States if they want to put on new tariffs because at this point, it's time to negotiate. It's becoming a game. So China basically said, we are going to ignore all the new tariffs the United States imposes on us. This is our final reciprocation of 125%. Two things from China today that are very important for the overall global landscape right now. Rare earth minerals, China is saying we are likely to stop exporting to the United States. In fact, some reports last night by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times showed that at the shipment ports, China is stopping rare earth minerals from being shipped to the United States, which is China's way of saying, hey, screw you, you're not going to mess with us, right? And we have a lot of rare earth minerals. Elon Musk did say today that China is just the refinery of those minerals. They don't actually have a ton of minerals in terms of the irreplaceability of it, right? So they do a lot of refining, which the United States needs, but there's other places in the world that have those rare earth minerals. Nonetheless, it's not a good thing for China to be doing this, but it shows the escalation of the trade war continuing to intensify. Number two, and I think this was even more important to me, China and Vietnam are talking, and Xi Jinping is doing a tour across Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia. What is he trying to do? Well, he's trying to talk to the Vietnamese prime minister. He's trying to talk to all these different countries that we are now tariffing or in negotiations with. And obviously, it looks like he wants to get some leverage by being able to speak to these guys and say, hey, don't give the United States everything they want because maybe we can give you something you want. Or if you're going to give this concession, then we might be able to make up for that concession. So there's a way you can work with us. I don't know what's exactly is happening, but Vietnam is, I didn't know this, Vietnam makes all the Nikes. China makes a lot of Nike products, but Vietnam makes a lot of the sneakers. So Vietnam is growing in terms of the role as a manufacturing hub for the world. China is exporting a lot of different are offshoring a lot of different labor to Vietnam as well. So I think the United States is getting tired of the fact that China is avoiding tariffs by going through Vietnam. The United States probably wants to stop that by getting a deal done with Vietnam to make sure that doesn't happen. But Xi Jinping is obviously having his own ideas and thoughts and prerogatives. And so he's working with different South Asian countries that we are essentially beefing with right now. It's like a rat beef, but it has to do with tariffs. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. I do think, this is my heart-to-heart opinions, that we are going to get a negotiated deal at least by the end of May. I think if not by the end of April with China, but granted, we only have 15 days left, so it might take more time. I think by the end of May, we get a deal. Now, if it doesn't happen until the end of May, I think it's by the end of June. Like, I think this is going to happen in a couple months. I don't think this is going to last till the end of 2025. Because if it does, it's going to be hard to have a bull market. We need to get the China deal done. It needs to be reciprocal. It needs to be in a way that the United States feels they got a good deal out of. It needs to be fair. The United States did threaten the other day that we are going to be taking off Chinese equities from the exchanges if they continue to retaliate. I don't think we're actually going to take off Alibaba from Robinhood or Fidelity, but like, that's the point. It's intensifying. And because it's intensifying, it is going to create a lot more volatility in the overall markets. Nonetheless, China trying to exert their power, and that's just something that everyone has to be aware of, because in this case, whoever gets the best of the deal is going to be seen as the winner. Both sides want to be seen as the winner. Hopefully, there is some level of negotiation that allows everyone to be perceived as a winner in this trade war. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. The daily recap is officially back. I'm sorry it went away last week. It just got really busy, but that's not the right excuse. So we're going to keep doing it every single day. I'm excited to do these episodes every single day. It helps me organize my own thoughts in terms of what's going on, and we'll keep it going. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all. I'll see you guys on the next one.